x to the nth plus y to the nth equals z to the nth, where n is greater than 2, of course. Data calls a cowboy a creature, and Mickey D shows up, but we have yet to meet his pals, Taco B, Bergie K, and Carly J. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 2, Episode 12, The Royale, with Cheese, written by Tracy Torme as Keith Mills, directed by Cliff Bole. This was March 25th, 1989. Where were you? What's up, Cirroc?
Oh, 1989. Oh, okay. What's up? Keith Mills as Tracy Torme. So is this like a name change? Like a...
I don't know. I just saw that just now, and it says, written by Tracy Torme, which we know was part of the writer's room throughout. He's written other episodes, but for this one specifically, it says as Keith Mills. We'll have to look that up a bit. Yeah. Everybody, please make sure you are subscribed to this channel, whether you are listening in or watching on YouTube. Please make sure you go check us out on Patreon. That's patreon.com/The Seventh Rule. And if you want an awesome self-sealing stem bolt Seventh Rule shirt like the one I am wearing, but you can get it in any color and any size and style, go check it out on our online store. You can get that in the description box below. Just click on that spring link and it will take you to our store, and you can get your very own cool shirt, and it supports our fun show. Now on with the show. Yeah.
Cliff Bole, huh? Yeah, this was kind of a slow pace with the it just felt slow to me. I don't know. So it made me feel like definitely the director's touch had something to do with the pace of this. That was one of my first kind of critiques when I was watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it may be the writing as well. I mean, the writing that wasn't that elaborate. It was kind of, lackluster. But I don't know. It was a combination of the both of them. I understand what they were trying to do. So there were some takeaways in this episode. I like the starting, when it comes, they show you that fragment of a NASA spaceship. So I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be interesting. But it took such a turn that I don't know. What do you think?
Well, since you asked, as soon as I saw, this is another one of those many episodes that I either hadn't seen or don't remember. So when I saw the title, The Royale, my first thought was, this sounds like Casino Royale. This sounds like, a Vegas gambling kind of thing. And so, to be perfectly honest, I'm not really that big on those kinds of episodes. I'm not big on the gangster or the mafia or the old Vegas kind of shows. It's or just even any of these old timey shows. Some people love those. But I worried when I saw The Royale that that's going to be one of these kinds of shows. And I thought it was going to be a holodeck episode where Picard goes in the holodeck and he says, I want to visit the Royale with cheese or whatever, and he goes and does his Dixon Hill thing. That's what I thought. I thought it was going to be one of those, like Captain Picard as Dixon Hill, which is definitely not my style. I like the Vegas stuff that Deep Space Nine did, but I generally don't like those going back to like the 50s or the whatever style, even though this was just confusing. And then upon watching it, I was confused kind of by the whole thing. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
As soon as they mentioned Mickey D, I thought of you, and I was like, I can't be the only person that thinks like Mickey D's.
Yeah.
What? Did they not?
Yeah, Mickey D's, the McDonald's. I don't know. It was, they referred to it. It refers to itself as being corny in this episode. So there's
Yes.
moments when it actually talks about how bad the book is, and so you're basing an episode based on a bad book, which will eventually lead to a bad episode. I don't know. I don't see how the logic can work in the opposite direction. If you're going to use a bad book, let's say they had used a book that is well known and has good storylines, then we would have been caught into a world where we're like, oh, that's 1984. That's George Orwell. That's Alice in Wonderland. That's something that we're familiar with, and then we could have gone through an interesting story, that we're all familiar with, and they could have played off some of those themes. But they went with a bad book as the main theme, and that's, I just, it really felt dated. The chauvinism was over the top, in my opinion, in some of the themes, especially with the gambler behind you.
Right. And that was explained as the bad book. So that's kind of their way of like winking to the audience and saying, so if it seems silly or corny or annoying or offensive, it's a bad book. And I wonder if that was added later to kind of explain that stuff, or if they were just planning that from the beginning as kind of like a meta thing, like, oh, they'll love it. They'll laugh along with us. They'll be like, what a bad book, and then maybe just the execution wasn't as good as they hoped. But yeah, I mean, the bad book thing, I kind of wasn't as bothered as you were about that, because at least they kind of explained it, and it was just they were trying to make it some kind of meta thing where they're like, it's supposed to be bad, so that makes it funny,
we got no sense of who or what these aliens were that created this environment, what they created it out of, what are the actual building blocks of this environment that was created, because they said it was neither alive nor mechanical. So I was really confused about, is this an organic matter? Like, what are we looking at? This is a hologram. Like there was no further explanation. So I wanted to know answers to questions that they didn't seem curious about. They were more curious about what is the story, and as opposed to, I guess, the story mostly being about this NASA endeavor. I would have liked more on that and less on this book.
Yeah.
And it actually being more of a puzzle or a riddle or some kind of challenge to get out of. I just didn't feel. I just didn't feel the story sold me on any of the aspects of it. There's a great line that Riker uses in this, which I think sums up the episode itself. And he says, none of it makes any sense.
He should have winked to the camera. None of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
And then we go, oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I kind of like the points you're making about that. They brought up some potentially interesting aspects to the story, but we never really got further into that. Almost like if they had focused more on any of those 2 or 3 or 4 other things a bit more, like if they focused on the aliens a bit more, or if they focused on what happened to that shuttle a bit more. They explained it well. I liked the explanation, but it was a good explanation, so I wanted to hear more about it. I was a little bit more curious about that story.
So they killed the guy's crew and then built this universe as an apology for him for guilt.
Yeah. They used this as like a Rosetta Stone or a Bible or something like that to build. They said that this poor book, this shitty book, this second-rate book, whatever it was, they used that as, as a template, as a blueprint for the ideal society, and they've dropped him in it, which sounds like hell. It sounds like if you think about the worst book you ever read and you had to live out the rest of your existence in that, how could he say, I've lived here for 38 years? I'd be like, I lived here for 38 hours, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, world. I gotta end this.
Yeah, you're trapped in it. There was a Twilight Zone episode, really good episode, about a guy who wakes up and he, finds himself in a place like this, and it's a casino, it's a hotel, and he's constantly winning. So every time he rolls the dice, he wins. Uh, Everything is winning, and all the girls are all over him. Every woman's with him, so he has all these girls all over him. He's winning, and as the episode goes on, he gets tired of winning because everybody's so nice to him, and nothing's going wrong, and he's kind of a little annoyed by the fact that everybody's like, "Yes, sir, yes, sir," and he's always winning. So I guess by the fourth, fifth, sixth day, whatever it was, he decides to the host of this experience. He says, you know, uh, I don't want to be here anymore. Like if I'm in heaven now, send me to hell. I don't want to be here in heaven anymore. He died obviously. So, and the person says to him, "What makes you think you're in heaven?"
Okay. I vaguely remember this actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes contradictory to our own kind of intuition that if heaven would be a place where you have all these indulgences and everything you want and you're always winning, and but that's actually in this episode being proposed that it's not heavenly to have this kind of situation where everything works like that. And that is a good storyline. Twilight Zone took that story, being trapped in a kind of a place like this, always on the casino, girls all over him. Same set, essentially, but way better script. And pacing was way better. And the questions that were raised were, thought-provoking about life and death and about heaven and hell and about, what you expect out of life. So those kinds of things. When I'm watching this episode, I'm trying to think, yes, I understand it would be really crappy to be stuck in this one book. But why did you bring that book with you on your one
poor guy,
book that you gotta
maybe didn't know he didn't know that was a bad book before he took it. Hopefully, otherwise, yeah, that's the worst mistake he ever made. Like he's like, I'm gonna read this a second time. Let's see if it gets better on my flight.
Yeah. That reminds me of a question we used to ask each other when we were younger. We would say, if you were stuck on a desert island, what were the 3 CDs you would, albums that you would take with you? Or what are the 3 books you would take with you? And we used to ask each other those questions and say, oh yeah, I would take this album, that, this, that. And this guy, this guy failed at that test. He obviously.
If you're going to go into outer space, what 3 books are you going to take with you? 3? I only need 1, and it's going to suck.
Hotel Royale.
It's funny. That reminds me, there was actually an episode, I think it was The Outer Limits. Wasn't The Outer Limits kind of like the knockoff of The Twilight Zone?
Yeah. Yeah. Not necessarily a knockoff. It was its own original.
But it was kind of similar in nature, right? Like a Black Mirror or a Twilight Zone. And it had a gambling episode too, which was kind of weird. I don't remember if it really had a great point, but there was some weird alien guy who comes down to some 18 or 19-year-old kid and was like, hey, if you hang on to everything you own and never get rid of anything, you will get rich beyond your wildest dreams. Whatever. So he's like, okay, so he hangs on to the 4 or 5 things that a 19-year-old has. And then he, like 40 years later, he's like an old guy trying to get his last 5 cents of gas into his old shitty pickup truck. And like he sees that alien again and he wants to kill him. He's like, I did everything you said, whatever, and the alien disappears. It's like a little furry alien or something like that. And then he ends up going into, that's what it was. Then there was a lady at a gas station that sees the guy's mug or something. And she says, hey, is that a whatever mug? And he says, yeah. She's like, can I buy it off you? He says, sure. She's like, how about 5? And he says, okay. And she says, okay, I'll be right back with your $5,000. And then she buys this weird mug for $5,000. And then he takes it to go gambling, like in Vegas, and cut to he's got millions and millions of dollars, super rich. He's in a suit, and then he sees the alien sit next to him at the bar. He says, well, I feel like I at least owe you a drink. The alien disappears, and there's a lady right there that thinks he's talking to her. She goes, oh, well, I don't know what I did, but sounds great, or something like that. And then they live happily ever after, or whatever like that. It's a fun little one. Anyway.
Yeah. This episode could have been all of those things. I just felt like
it could have been.
It was none of those.
We're reminiscing of good storytelling of yore.
Yeah. Wait till we reminisce. What was that? Ocean's 11, which is the Deep Space Nine themed, casino episode, which I like. I like the Ocean's 11. The timing, it had to do with all of the distractions, and all of those things were interesting. It kept the pace going. This was like, they're stuck in there. It's moving slowly. Figure out what's going on. Communications are down. Even like certain basic things, like let's say the three of us were, I was on that away team, and let's say I'm Riker, and I've got my crew with me. I've got Data and Worf with me. We pop up on the right. It's a great crew. We pop up on the surface. This ammonia storm is floating above us, and we see this revolving door in the pitchness of black, in the voidness of black. I can't say that I would, as the senior guy in charge, all three of us be walking into that particular door without some reconnaissance. I would not allow all three of us to go in there. I would send.
Or when they were walking out, too. When they're walking out, I thought the same thing. I said, why don't one person test it out rather than the three of them look like the Three Stooges twice?
Yeah. So 3 people in a revolving door, which is weird because, in a revolving door, you kind of have to walk really slow because the guy in front of you is pushing. And so
it'd be funny if Worf doesn't know how to use them and he tries to cram in like with Riker. Riker's like, "Oh, bro, you can't get your own pod." He's like, "I do not know how this works."
Or Data stops it and it doesn't keep going and they're all stuck in there. Just that would have been a nice little comedy moment. But seriously, 3 senior officers, who have very good decision-making skills, are all going to walk into a revolving door into an abyss of nothingness. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what's on the other side. And I just feel like that's a big risk. I would send a reconnaissance first and be like, okay, Data, go in there. And if we don't have any kind of communication back from Data, then I would say, okay, then we start to make decisions. And then that could have also been story building for this episode, right? Captain Data went inside the revolving door.
He hasn't come back. Yeah,
he hasn't come back. We've lost communications. Can you try to secure communications with Data? Okay, we're working on it. Just hang tight. And then Then Worf and Riker devise a plan where they tether each other. Say, I'm going to be tethered to you as you go in. Like some kind of, problem-solving type of thing.
I was thinking about that too a bit earlier on when they were still up on the ship. And they said, oh, this thing's got ammonia and this and that and all these things. And Geordi's like, nasty. And they say, all right, well, I want to go down there and see what's going on. Why don't they send the android who doesn't need to worry about toxic chemicals? Like, why gamble? Why are they like, well, hopefully it'll be okay. Why don't they just send Data down? And Data can look around and be like a probe and see what's going on. He's not going to breathe in ammonia. He's not, because they said that, okay, there's a little air bubble kind of thing, right? Where it's fine. Okay, cool. But what if it leaks? What if as soon as somebody shows up, I mean, what are you guys doing? Like, you have basically a super being and you're not using him.
And equipment. So they have suits that they could wear. Oxygen type mask suits, right? Protective gear. Like, they showed up literally in their clothes on the surface, like walking around. And like, with like nothing, no kind of visor, nothing, no kind of breathing extra apparatus, or even extra weaponry. Let's say I'm going to show up. I'm going to bring the big guns with me, the rifles. I'm not going to just show up with the little pop. Yeah, something, right? Like some extra, or a medical kit or something extra, right? They literally show up like with their sandals on, flip flops and a beach towel, and I'm like, oh,
and their
guys,
PJs.
yeah, this is not the proper attire for exploratory kind of planetary surface mission.
So here's a question for you. For me, this episode immediately reminded me of an original series episode. And I feel like people that have seen this episode all know where I'm going with this. And that episode is called A Piece of the Action. I believe it's an original series episode, A Piece of the Action. And Kirk and Spock go to this planet that's like modeled after like, I don't know, 1950s mafia Chicago or 60s mafia Chicago. And then they're like playing this card game called Fizbin. I think it's Fizbin. Yeah, Fizzgig is that little dog creature in The Dark Crystal. That's Fizzgig. I think the game was Fizzbin, and they've got all these weird rules. I don't know. I guess you haven't seen it because you're looking at me like I'm crazy right now, but it's just weird. Some people love the episode because they've got like machine guns and it's crazy and it's like gangster, but that kind of stuff's not really for me.
Yeah, Fizzbin. That's like a rapper name or something. Little Fizzbin. I just, when we get in the second half of the review, there's some saving graces that I'll kind of highlight on that I think were some of the origins for this episode. You said the original season. Is this the episode from the original season?
Yeah, original series. So you got Spock in this brown suit with these little Gatling guns or something, these machine guns that he and Bones have, and Kirk and Spock are.
He looks good in that suit, by the way.
Yeah. Gangsters. Kirk's in pinstripe. But anyway, you were saying?
Yeah, no, I think there's other aspects for the origin of this idea, which I'll probably get more into in the second half. But, some of those actors, I thought you were going to give me a little breakdown on some of those actors that we saw, because they felt like the guys that I've seen in almost every 80s.
I feel like definitely the assistant manager was very recognizable to me. I was like, where have I seen this guy? I feel like I've seen him in so many things in the 80s.
In everything.
Let's look him up.
Figure out.
We can hop to that break right now. I know we've been ragging on this episode, but like all I could do when I was watching this was hope. I was like, maybe Cirroc liked this episode. Maybe he'll save me because I'm such a oh great, it's a gangster movie, or it's a 50s movie, holodeck episode, or I get all grumpy about it. But there were actually a lot of things I liked. I actually did laugh a lot. There were a lot of lines that cracked me up. And also, it's the origin of this episode is really interesting as well. So we'll cover all that stuff. Tracy Torme's origin story. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule.
Get it over with.
All right. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week. A passing Klingon cruiser reported discovering pieces of a strange vessel. X to the nth plus Y to the nth equals Z to the nth, where n is greater than 2, of course. The Hotel Royale has been expecting a trio of foreign gentlemen. Anybody with sense is afraid of Mickey D, apparently. Data calls a cowboy a creature. Mickey D, Taco B, Bergie K, and Carly J. I don't know where to go with that. Worf can spot a turbo lift a mile away somehow. America has 52 states between 2033 and 2079. America.
Yeah.
So Tracy Torme, apparently this was the pitch that he made initially in the first season of Star Trek that got him added to the room. They got him the job. This is from our friend Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, who said that this is her favorite episode. And of course, I inquired. I said, "How is that possible? What's going on?" So she gave me a little backstory. And so this was apparently his first pitch. And obviously, it went through a lot of changes between the first and the second season. And they finally shot it. But this was the one that got him the gig, supposedly. Maybe it's because, Mel Torme's son, right? So maybe he's into that kind of stuff. But that's an interesting thing.
Yeah. I guess this was the maybe pitched a lot more clever than how it turned out to be in the product. Sometimes the pitch is really great, and there's an aspect of it that resonates when you pitch it that doesn't come across in this episode for me. But yeah, I had a question. One of the questions was, how are they in the story?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? How is the story that was written hundreds of years ago before their arrival, how are they the foreigners in the story? Where you know what I mean? Like, wouldn't there actually be the actual foreigner characters who did do the thing, purchase the place? It was weird to me how they become in the story. That would have been another thing to kind of explain and maybe analyze. Like, you're part of the story, and the aliens are reacting to your presence, and therefore the outcome is changing, and you have been incorporated. Like some more.
That's a good point. How did they know? Like the story. If they created the story, the aliens, wouldn't they have also included those foreign people to buy? Or maybe just the alien said, "This is how the story ends, so we have to wait until 3 foreigners show up." But then it could have gone on forever. Who knows? What if 4 foreigners showed up or 2? Then they're like, "Oh well, we got to keep going." But I will say,
how they could be in the story would be a nice other thing to explain. I mean, there was just so many flaws in this. Yeah.
Okay.
What were you going to say?
Just real quick, I'm looking at some things for this Sam Anderson guy, the guy that played the assistant manager. Just trying to find out what I saw. I mean, obviously he was in tons and tons and tons of things, from Dallas to Hunter to Simon and Simon, Hardcastle and McCormick. Oh, I wonder if he was Hunter. No, he wasn't Hunter. Hardcastle and McCormick, Cagney and Lacey, The Golden Girls. But there were some things I did reckon. Alienation, Growing Pains. He was in 13 episodes of Growing Pains. He was in 37 episodes of Perfect Strangers. So this must be where I've seen him with someone.
Yeah, that's where. That area, that time period for me.
Picket Fences, Murder, She Wrote, just a ton of things.
I mean, he's his face is so recognizable. It's just like boom, right away. I was like, oh, this guy's done 1,000 things.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of those, constantly working actors, and so is, by the way, the gambler guy who's behind you in your screenshot.
I didn't recognize his face.
Oh yeah, I've seen him in a ton of things. Shoot, usually playing a very.
His name's Noble Willingham. The name's Noble.
Yeah.
Noble.
I'm willing, Noble, Pam. But it was cool though that there were a few cool things in this episode. Besides the fact that Mickey D's was fully represented with their Big Mac cheese. Remember when Mickey D's had that song that you had to sing in order to get a free Big Mac?
Oh, pickles, fries, lettuce, cheese, or something that was like a...
Yeah, as a Big Mac McDLT, a quarter pounder with some cheese, fillet of fish, 7-Up. Remember that song? They had a whole song.
You remember it better than I do, apparently. But I do remember that.
There was a song that if you remembered the song and you said it at McDonald's, they would give you like a free fries or free Big Mac or something.
That's embarrassing.
So you had to say Big Mac McDLT, a quarter pounder with some cheese, fillet of fish. Like it was the menu. But aside from Mickey D's, who, by the way, I thought was super. It was just so corny. The whole acting between the guy who wants to kill Mickey D and Mickey D himself. They were over the top, playing these very, super corny roles, in my opinion. But
Well, there were a lot of things that made me laugh kind of unintentionally. There are some that were intentional, and there are some that were not. Like one
let me guess,
was
Worf was what?
very funny when that was intentional. When they said, "Do you need room service?" He's asking for room service. They say, "Oh, tell him."
Yeah.
He goes, "No." That was it.
And then looks at the phone for a while like this.
Yeah. But one thing that made me laugh, like I'm assuming not on purpose, was when they beam in the piece of the spacecraft that has NASA on it, and we immediately see, whoa, NASA, we get it. Like this is something, And then what does the camera do? It slowly zooms in with the dramatic music, and there it is. Good doodle. And it just like that. And I'm like, bro, we get it. You don't need to zoom in for us to go, wait a minute. Is that? It's like, we got it. The second we saw it, we understood. You don't need to and then right after that,
we're watching Star Trek, guys. We know science fiction.
We get it.
Know the biggest space program out there.
Yeah.
We got them.
And then right after, then they come back from the commercial or something like that. And Data says, it's terrestrial. And I'm like, thank you, Data. thank you. So this NASA piece is from Earth. Huh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like, it's funny because sometimes Troi is useful, her skill set. And it's only when essentially Riker's unable to be communicated with on the planet surface and she can sense what Riker's feeling. That's basically the major utilitarian use of her skill set. They can't communicate with Riker or somebody else, but usually Riker on a planet surface, and she senses whether he's in danger or he's having a good time. And he's getting some booty, Captain. Mm-hmm. I sense like she's just the sensor. And that's basically the only time she's useful with that skill set for me. It's kind of crazy.
Right. This was another one of those cases where I was like, you guys, this is brilliant. Troi can sense his emotions and what he's feeling on a planet while they're on a ship. They should be using this every single time. I felt like when she said that, Picard should have turned to her and been like, wait, what? You can do this? Why? You've been on this ship for a year and a half, and I'm just now finding out that we can have an assessment of what the away team is doing at all times. She could just be like, she could just say every couple minutes, okay, they're doing fine. Everything's great. Oh, they're a little tense. No, they're feeling fine again. Oh, they seem to be in danger. Beam them out. Like, that would be the most useful tool, and it would be so great. Yes. And then they just use it this one time. I'm like, this is a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant tool. Great job. Expand on it for the other episodes.
Yeah, expand on it. Have Geordi work alongside her to find a way to use that ability to communicate with people when they have lost communications. Geordi could use his engineering stuff to figure out a way to amplify her telepathic abilities and, increase the signal strength for her, or make it so she can use it to transmit information herself as opposed to just picking up on it, right? She could be able to put a thought in Riker's head as opposed to just feeling his thoughts. So this could be expanded upon. This is a great thing. This is what you do in science and discovery, is you take something that's amazing like that and say, how do we use that to? It's the same way they took waves, different kinds of waves, and now we have remote controls and we can turn our TV on without getting off the sofa. they took something and said, how do we apply this to something else and make it better and user friendly? And they could be using that same kind of scientific method to find ways to use telepathy to overcome sensory malfunctions on the ship, right? A totally great science exploration. It could be also a relationship building between two characters like Geordi and Troi, who are working together on this project. It can be not an immediate thing, but an overarching kind of thing. Maybe he can use he can see it with his visors, what she feels, and there could be a communication between the two of them. He can see a projection of something she senses, and this kind of dual working together. It's an idea that is totally just glossed over in one line in this particular episode. Oh, I said he's amused, Captain. I sense he's amused, and that was just, okay. Well, then fine then.
Right, that could be so helpful throughout every episode. Now she has a job. Rather than just sitting there and stating the obvious, she could state the things that are not obvious, like keeping track of the away mission, the away team, so that they don't even have to say, hey, beam us up, we're in trouble. Just the second she senses their stress or their distress or their fear or whatever, she can immediately say, transporter room, get them out. And, what if their comm badges get knocked off and they can't, what an amazing talent or skill set to have. And it was just, I don't think it's ever used again. Maybe it is. Let us know in the comments below if this is explored further in the next generation, but it doesn't seem familiar to me. Maybe I'm wrong there. I mean, I guess she can sense it, like when they're talking to an alien ship and then the person says, get out of the neutral zone or we will destroy you. And then she goes, I sense he's angry, Captain. I'm like, dude, he just threatened to kill us. I know.
Literally.
One thing that did make me laugh that was on purpose was when Data says, I believe you are trapped in the Royale. And the cowboy says, sure does seem like it when you're losing, doesn't it? I'm like, that's funny. that one bites a little bit.
Yeah.
That's
my unintended laugh was when Riker said, everybody rides the train. So,
there was a Riker thing that made me laugh too. Like, there are these little things where I just wonder, like, what are they? Where does this come from? It was when Worf says, hey, let me shoot the door to try to get out. And Riker says, go ahead. And Worf shoots the phaser. It hits the door. Riker looks at the wall or the door where it's being hit. And then he looks back at the phaser like, what do you look at? It's, I don't know, just this weird little, Riker does the funniest look sometimes. I swear, he acts like he thinks like a director. Like he's trying to convey specific things. Like, look, my actors, you could tell he was born to be a director.
And what I thought was really unnatural about that is, like, dude's aiming his phaser at the door, and Riker, you're standing not like in the line of fire and like right where the door is. So like if there is an explosion or something, you're the first dude to get hit with the debris, right? You don't know what the reaction to this phaser against this door is going to be. You might blow up something, and Riker's standing there looking like this, like right there. It's happening this close to him. And he's like, okay. I just thought, poor blocking, terrible state. Obviously, Cliff wanted to catch them in the same shot, but
that's
the way it
was.
The blocking was not good in my opinion, on that one.
One line from Carl's Jr. or Mickey D's was like that. I was like, okay, that's a good line. He says, "No woman's worth dying for, killing for." Not dying for. I'm like, okay, that works. That feels like it's one of those old timey story lines that's memorable. I get it. I'm like, okay, that felt right. That felt like that character,
Yeah, it was indicative of the kind of chauvinism though of that time, but it was appropriate for the time.
For the character.
They mentioned the word alien life form, and it was funny because they were like, this was created by an alien life form. I'm like, you mean Alf?
That would be nice.
That would have been great. But I want to go back to something earlier. And that was what I thought the original motivation for the script was.
Hmm.
And that what I thought it was is about the mathematician, the French mathematician that Picard opens this episode talking about. His name is Pierre Fermat, Pierre de Fermat. And he talks about Fermat's theorem, the x to the nth power plus y to the nth power equals z to the n as long as n is greater than 2,
Right.
which is a real mathematical theorem, and it is a theorem that has its roots in calculus, essentially before calculus was even discovered. So this is a real mathematical theorem that was posited in 1670. Now, it was written in the margins of a book.
Hmm.
And so those things are accurate when Picard talks about a theorem being written in the margins of a book. The book was called Diophantus Arithmetica, published in 1670. And in the side of the notes was this theorem, this x to the n plus y to the n equals z to the n. And it was never proven to be true. It was just a theory. And with all theorems, mathematicians have to prove it to see if it's true or not.
Right.
And this theorem remained dormant for 358 years and was only proven in 1994 by a
Wow.
mathematician named
5
Andrew
years.
Wiles. Yeah.
5 years after this episode, it
After
actually
this
was.
episode.
Wow.
After this episode. And
And
so
who
I
was the
thought
mathematician you said?
the mathematician that proved it was a man named Andrew Wiles.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fermat, the French mathematician that wrote it, was in 1670. But it took 358 years in order for that proof to be made. Was it? No, 350. No, 300. It's just looks like it's 324
What
years, but
what
it
year
depends
was
on
it?
when that theorem was posited.
It was like 1600 or something like that, right?
Yeah, 16. Yeah, he lived from 1607 to 1665. But I guess the book was published in 1670, but it could have been written prior to that. So they're saying 358 years. I'll go with them. Either way, the interesting point is that it wasn't proven until 1994, which is 5 years after this episode, which makes me wonder, was this episode impetus for somebody
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, I'm going to solve that"?
That's amazing. It could have inspired somebody
Yes,
to
yes,
do it. It could have just kind of reawoken that
yes,
mission in people, or somebody for the first time saying, is that real? Is that?" And then like looking it up and being like, okay, wait, wow,
yes,
that's a very interesting point. It's absolutely possible, right?
yeah. It's very possible, which would be indicative of the story itself, because the story itself is about this astronaut who lays dormant for all of these years until being brought back alive, right? And that would be
It's good.
also the mathematic equation. It had laid dormant for all of those years until it was brought back alive by this guy.
Right. And that was something that Picard says at the end. This is like the second time they've done this, second or third time, where Riker walks in on Picard trying to solve a puzzle, or he's researching something. And then Riker says, "Oh, what's this?" And he goes, "Oh, it's whatever he says." And we as the audience is supposed to go like, "Ooh, that's fascinating." Though the
Yes.
world revolves around this thing or that thing. And then at the end of
Yes.
the episode, except I think in the other times, the end of the episode, they just never mention it again. At least this time, they kind of tied it back together and says, "Oh, it seems this puzzle was solved," or whatever he said. That kind of bookends it a little bit. But that's really interesting how you're right. There was much more of a parallel this time, where that was a puzzle that needed to be solved. And this was, the theme was an old puzzle or a cold case kind of situation that needed to be revived or stumbled onto again. And boy, oh boy, we're almost out of time. It is time for the home run of the day, if you can believe that. What do you got? Who do you got?
Home run.
We'll take a bunt.
Yeah. Hard for me to give a home run on this one. Yeah, I'm gonna give my home run to O'Brien.
Yeah, that's our guy.
He finally gets a home run for me because I was really happy to see him. I'm glad that he was part of that whole transporter scene, holding up the big NASA sign. And I also feel like he's getting his role. Like I'm feeling his presence on the ship more. So even though he had a very small role, and he's getting rewarded for having a small role this time, and it's so bright.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you who I've got here. I've got two people. One is Mr. Worf, because he said a couple funny lines. He did a couple things. That was good. He delivered these things well enough to get the laughs that they were intending to get. And the other one goes to the actress that played Vanessa, Jill Jacobson, because she didn't have like the biggest role, but what they say, there are no small roles, only small actors. But as we've seen before, sometimes people can embrace something that maybe is a considered a minor role or a lesser role, but really just do it very well, like the holographic character that Minuet that Riker fell in love with, or Picard or whatever. And it kind of, to me, felt like an off-putting kind of role, but the actress still pursued it to the best of her ability and made it as believable as possible. And this lady did a great job, Jill Jacobson, I believe, of saying, okay, so I'm playing kind of a caricature of a novelization of something. All right, I'll still knock it out of the park. So kudos to her for doing that. Also, we've got some people that hit a home run like literally every single time. And their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom TJ, Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arukin.
Arukin.
That's the guy. Titus Moeller, Darlena Marie, Dr. Muhammad Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anna Post, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Justine Norton Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison, Leach Hyde, Julie Manusfee, Marcia Classic Schreier, Greg Wickstrom, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason the Outrageous Oken. All right, everybody, stick around. Right after this, Cirroc's going to guess the IMDb score. We're going to talk about all the non-appearance mentions. It's going to be nuts on the free-for-all. We will be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
This is the free-for-all. Look who's here. We've got Malissa Longo. We've got Allison Leach Hyde. She's wearing a shirt from the Introverted Republic made by MelissaLongo.com. Something like that. TheIntrovertedRepublic.com. You can get yours. We've got the Dark Lord, Chris McGee, who one time actually pushed a button to make his voice sound really creepy. I'm hoping he can bring that back someday. We've got my live in Tokyo. Carrie Schwent is here. She totally gets it with the Mickey D's references. We've got we've got Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel walking the streets of New York. Anil O. Palat is here with the Enterprise behind him. We've got Jed Thompson with the Royale behind him. We've got Jason Oken with a really cool poster of the Royale. That's a really good one. We've got Dr. Susan V. Gruner on the bridge of the D. We've got Gregory K. Wickstrom showing up, showing us how it's done. Aloha. We have Mr. Matt Boardman, the Matt Boardman, so sorry. And we've got Marcia, classic Schreier warping through space. First things first. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Well, first thing first, I want to say thanks to Sue for my shirt that I'm rocking. I got it on, the Sparta.
Hey, turn around. Let's see the back.
Yeah.
The back of the shirt.
It's got the official stabbed in the back. Thanks for stabbing me in the back, Sue. There's the knife to show, to prove it. Also, Anil got a cool chat. Is that a Chat Pack shirt you got rocking there?
Yep.
I see you.
Awesome.
Yes. So,
matching suit.
Yeah. So the IMDb, I'm going to guess, and Jason, your background is going to raise my score of what I was going to originally give this episode. And the reason I say that is because when I've been shopping for really cool Star Trek shirts, one of the things that I did find was the Royale shirt online, which I gravitated towards. And I did watch the episode, but I liked the design of the shirt, and it intrigued me. Just like, what is this about? It had that print on the shirt that's behind you. So, because of that, it must have been an impactful episode for fans because they like some of the aspects of it. I'm going to give it higher than I would based on what I saw. So I'm going to say a 7.1.
Interesting. What were you going to give? What were you going to guess it was before Jason stacked the deck?
It was going to be in the high fives.
Cirroc, I'm sorry I put that up because that's where I rate this thing. Probably 5.7.
Now, does anybody have a guess, though? Not what they would rate it, but a guess on what they think the IMDb score is that doesn't already know.
7.4.
Mark Eaton.
6.3. In the sixes, like 6.8 or something.
8.5.
8.6.
Whoa. Wow. Got a gambling man over here.
I love this.
We got a high roller over here.
This
guy's saying
there's something about it. It's like
this guy's
like,
showing. He's showing
like
18.
Like
he's showing 18, and he's saying, "Hit me," right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Pull the
well, the answer is 6.6. Everybody, 6.6. So Sue said 6.8. Somebody said 6.3. Those were very close. All right. Secondarily, did we have any non-appearance mentions today? I didn't catch any.
Did not either.
All right. That's that.
Yeah.
Malissa Longo, will you please get us on the right track and tell us what you thought of this episode?
Yes. First, I'm going to read a little interesting bit of trivia that I read about. I read that Tracy Torme wrote the episode, and the story was supposed to be about a man who was trapped to relive his most pleasant memory, but then that memory turns into a nightmare because he's really reliving it over and over again. And then he was dissatisfied with how the episode turned out, so used just the pseudonym Keith Mills in the credit as the writer. So what I thought about this episode was that while it was fairly pointless, I found it to be entertaining because it was like watching a time capsule of what I imagine Vegas was like in the 80s. I liked the clothing, and I liked looking at the hairstyles and the shoes and the telephones and even the room key is something kind of historic now because we don't see those kinds of room keys anymore at any hotels. So I found it entertaining for that reason. And I also, when Worf answered the phone, I wanted to say, and he was on the phone with room service, I wanted him to say, or I wanted him to order some prune juice. But yes, and Curiouser is a fun bit too, a fun line. So yeah, entertaining. I was entertained. Nothing deep here.
That was entertaining. Thank you very much, Malissa Longo. Allison Leach Hyde is also here. Pressure's on. How are you? What do you think of this episode?
I'm good. As for this episode, I never skip it because I always want it to be better than it is. Like every time I watch it, I'm like, is it actually as bad as I remember? And then it is every time, but I want it to be better because it's a cool premise. It could have been so much more surreal. And I think like completely leaning into them being fully stuck in a really bad novel would have been really fun because the guys could have, Riker really could have leaned into it because they weren't going to die. But they had to play out this scenario to get out the door. And they really could have leaned into how terribly this book was written. And I think that would have been a lot more entertaining to watch because the guest actors were having a ball playing completely ridiculous characters. So that would have been much more, at least I would have liked that more. I have like 3 pages of notes because so much stuff was going on behind the scenes. Like Cliff Bull was like, Tracy's original script is so much better. And like secretaries were coming up to Tracy afterwards, like, why did they change it? It was so much better to begin with. So, there's that little backstory because Hurley is just like, no, this is too much like a piece of the action. So we have to change it. Well, because, it's gangsters and based off of a book. So there's a lot of back and forth. And this is the start of the end for Tracy. Like, no, I can't handle this workroom anymore. So that's kind of sad. Yes, there's a piece of the action, which is also a very entertaining episode. One little thing I really liked about the remaster is in the original episode, when they show the astronaut's astronaut suit, the patch was actually a NASA Apollo 17 patch. And when they remastered it, they changed it to be correct for the storyline. So I thought that was cool.
It is very cool. Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde. The Dark Lord is here. He's got, looks like he's playing 5-card stud. What have you got for us, Chris McGee?
It's a 5-card, Charlie. Okay, so if I could choose one word to describe this episode, it would be fun. Is it a good episode? No. But that doesn't make it any less enjoyable, at least to me. I will say it is quite the dated episode. I'm sure you've probably touched on this in the earlier segments by now, but since the episode was aired, Fermat's last theorem was solved 5 years after it was aired, and NASA's logo was changed 3 years after the episode aired. I'm sure you probably found some other things as well. I suppose it could have changed back before this episode takes place, but anyway,
It was back in 2020.
They did. Oh well, I missed that.
Wow.
All right. And it was one of my former friends' absolute favorite episodes in the entire run. We watched it probably at least a dozen times together. Having recently watched literally all of the James Bond movies, I kind of wonder whether or not the name of this was taken from Ian Fleming's first novel, Casino Royale. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just popped into my head when I was watching this. I don't really have a whole lot of any other notes. I have plenty of nitpicks, so I'll save for things left unsaid. And of course, there are quite a few memorable quotes of the episode, but the one that I chose for this time was, "All right, time to get down to business." Back to you, Ryan.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dark Lord Chris McGee. All right, there's somebody amongst us that said it was their favorite episode ever. We'll let you know who that is right now. It's Dr. Anne Marie Siegel, who's walking
What
around New
a
York and making me
surprise.
dizzy. Yeah. Whoa. What do you think of this
my
episode?
Apartment, there are people working on my apartment, so I have to be outside. Okay, it's like my favorite. Okay, I know I say this all the time, but it really is my favorite in Chill Times Arrow. I just feel like it really captures your imagination, and it's one of those episodes that really gets a little kid like so intrigued about space exploration and like the possibilities and how it could go wrong and like things like that. And then there's so many like quotable one-liners. Like every time we played a game in my house, no matter what it was, we'd always be like, "Baby needs a new pair of shoes," or like any of those like amazing like Data and Texas lines. And I mean, it's just every moment of the episode it just like sparkles for me. And then I know like the backstory is a little bit crazy with the episode and like Tracy Torme hating it, but I have to say like his original script also kind of ended like Metamorphosis and also like Menagerie. So I thought it was kind of a good thing that they changed it and like it didn't need more. It just like let the characters be crazy and funny. And I mean, it was a dark and stormy night and hard trying to read the whole book in his reading room, which just like every second cracks me up so much. So I love it. Best episode, Chill Times Arrow.
We'll see about that. Great stuff. Thanks, Anne Marie Siegel. Compelling case you made. Compelling. However,
okay, I have to go because of my battery. But
good luck in New
see
York.
you later. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
You know who else is compelling?
Yeah.
Mai live in Tokyo. What's up, Mai? What do you got for us today?
You know what? I don't know. People are down on this episode. It has a special something like a theater has. You know, it's like where a voice is projected to every part of the theater, whether it's small or large, depending on what's needed on stage. I love the theater, so this episode really grabbed me. When I went to see Beautiful, everybody was singing along. When I went to see Ain't Too Proud, everybody was dancing in the aisles. When I went to see Leopoldstadt, everybody was crying. This is what theater does. It elicits something special from the audience. You know, it's the background, the get up today. I'm going to the theater. This was fun for me. I found myself similarly engaged with the people at the landing party were meeting at the Royale. I mean, was it the setting, the story, the costumes, the lady in the silver wrap, or Data with his cowboy hat? Whatever. They achieved something bigger with this episode, I think, than the component parts that they had. The humor was fun with Mickey D as the villain's name. The bellboy, massive Sal Mineo in Rebel Without a Cause vibes from him. But I would say this episode brought theater to space, and I'm going to theaters. I liked it.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Mai live in Tokyo, and excellent pronunciation of that play that I'm guessing is German.
Leopoldstadt, yeah.
Great. That one.
Part of Vienna. It's the Jewish quarter of Vienna.
All right. Carrie Schwent is here as well. Her Viennese is impeccable. What do you got for us today, Carrie?
Nothing too much. Impeccable and then it's non-existent, but
imperceptible, I guess.
This one is so much fun for me. A little bit of a guilty pleasure. As long you could nitpick it till the cows come home, but as long as you let yourself just let all that go and just let the story carry you along, it's fun. Brent Spiner absolutely gets the gold star for the episode. That scene at the end when he starts playing craps just cracks me up every single time with his little snaps. And as soon as I heard Mickey D's name, it had been a while since I'd seen it, so I'd forgotten about the name. But as soon as I heard the name, I knew exactly what my background was going to be. I came prepared with a smoothie. He might be a bellboy shooting, pop, but he makes a good smoothie. And I loved the guest. I'm always about the guest actors because I watch a lot of stuff, so I remember them from various things. Often I have to look them up to remind myself. But the assistant manager, I absolutely love him in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer spinoff, Angel. He's in the first couple of seasons of that. He's in the original miniseries for Stephen King's The Stand, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan, so I love him in it. He has a fairly small part in it. And Cirroc, I don't know if you noticed, but I had to look when I looked her up. She was in an episode of Deep Space Nine at the end of season 4. She's in Garrick's shop and she's a Bajoran woman who owns a cafe, and she flirts with Odo. Yeah, I looked up, saw the picture. Went, oh, yeah, I loved her dress in the Royale episode. That was a very cute dress. And
she stood out. She stood out.
And the Colonel Richie's ship, when it is set to launch, it launches on mine and Eric's 31st wedding anniversary, because it launches on July 23rd, and that's our anniversary. And I promised to point along one tiny nitpick from him, because he's a math nerd. He loves his statistics. So I promised to mention that rolling a 6 happens 5 out of 36 times. Rolling a 7 happens 6 out of 36 times. So rolling a 7 is going to be just slightly more common. In any case, promise to pass that along. And poor DC and Puerto Rico, you guys don't get to become states for another 10 years. Got to be a little patient. But I decided for the limerick this time around, it's a bit of a cautionary tale about things you pack on a trip. Be careful what books you bring into space. You might end up trapped in one place. You can't ask anyone why, so don't bother to try. Choose wisely. The rest of your life awaits.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Carrie, the math nerd Schwent. We've got Anil O. Palat hanging out with us. What's up, Anil? What do you think of this episode?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised some people didn't like it. I don't know why. I like this one because it's kind of creepy and it has like a Twilight Zone-y vibe. And in the first 2 seasons, like, you know, it doesn't have a great budget, like it doesn't look that great, but creepy is something they can do with those things. Like it kind of works, you know? And the first guy behind the counter, he had that kind of like that weird, like a weird vibe, right? Like you didn't know if he was like just being like mean or what, you know, it kind of fit into that thing. And I wish more of the guest actors had that sort of like, you couldn't really tell if they were in on it, you know, like he kept that going. So I liked it. It was just kind of a weird episode. And sometimes like in Star Trek, you know, you keep running into the same aliens. So it's kind of cool to run into one that we don't know what happened. They're super weird. They made this whole casino thing and we have no idea. And it's just so out there, you know? So I like it. I think it's just weird enough to like, if it was like an episode in later seasons, I don't think I would like it as much. But I think in the first 2 seasons, for some reason, it really, really fits. So, yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of first couple seasons still feel like the original series a bit. And this feels very original series-y. Good stuff. Thanks very much, Anil. Also, pause. Our good friend Faith Howell could not make it today, but she's got a great question for everybody in the live chat. And in the comments below, the question is, if you were stuck for eternity in a book, like in this episode, what would you want that book to be? So go ahead and answer that in the comments below and or in the live chat. Maybe we'll talk about it in Things Left Unsaid, but that's a fun and interesting question. What book would you want to be stuck in forever? What's up, Jed Thompson? How are you today? What did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. Just to kind of go with the crowd here, it's fun. It is quirky and it is camp. It's definitely a bit of camp in there, and I kept waiting for Vic to show up, but we have to wait a couple more years for that, I suppose. Also, this is Vegas. Where were you all? I was looking in the background for you guys and didn't see it. I'm going to keep this relatively short. I got a bunch of stuff for Things Left Unsaid. But how far does an Imzadi have to go to not have his emotions read? I mean, are they in a standard orbit? Are they tens of thousands of miles away? I mean, there's obviously, Troi. I think this is probably ultimately kind of taking a step back here. This might be one of the more, deeper things here, more long-term plot oriented. But, Troy's obviously reading Riker, and that's the only way that they know one of them's alive. Obviously one's, an android. But that was I thought that was kind of neat, that there was that connection was being made there. But I got a few things for later on.
Very good. That's an interesting question. Like, does the reception start to deteriorate as you go further and further away? That's interesting. Good stuff. Thank you very much, Jed. Jason, the outrageous Oaken, everybody, is finally here to tell us what he thinks of this episode.
Sure, and I hate to be the contrarian, but every time I watch it, frankly, it gets worse and worse for me. I mean, I guess that's what happens when you take a story that wanted to be something and you try to make it something else and don't quite get there. I mean, I certainly understand Tracy Torme's feelings about it, and honestly, I haven't seen his original story to be able to tell that. I mean, Star Trek is full of stories like this. Probably The City on the Edge of Forever is the most famous one, where Harlan Ellison went to his grave thinking that he wrote a masterpiece and that what made it to the screen was awful. And I may dispute him on that, but that's a topic for another day. In this case, I mean, this to me is kind of a middling episode. It really is not quintessentially not really what I watched Star Trek for. I mean, it does look like 1980s television, and having Cliff Bole direct it doesn't really help. There's one piece of movement of the camera right at the beginning of the episode, and that was scripted. Literally, it scripts the camera moving, sort of following Riker as he goes up the horseshoe to the science station in the back, and that's the extent of the movement we get here. In the end, it's a story. It's basically an episode about nothing, and Seinfeld was a hell of a lot better than that. It's not about any of the characters. There aren't really any decent concepts here. And again, I'll keep it fairly brief. There's one line that was cut from the episode. It was basically, in that version of the script, it was Data describing the book. And I think it describes the episode pretty well. It says the writing is elementary, the plotting predictable, and the characters one-dimensional. And I think that's basically what we get here. And I'll leave the rest for later.
Mm-hmm. Very good biting, Jason Oaken, biting commentary. We've got Dr. Susan V. Gruner here. What do you think, Sue? Is it a 10?
No. And I have a hotel key that's kind of like that. Can you see it? It's just I made it into a travel bug. It's a geocaching thing. I did not like this episode. I usually skip it, and I actually appreciated it a little bit more this time. But I think they could have done a lot more with the astronaut. I wanted to know more about him, and they just left him there. That's kind of creepy to me. But then I wrote down, what astronaut, along the lines of what Carrie said, I think, what astronaut would bring such a trashy novel when they're leaving the solar system? It makes no sense to me. What, they didn't have Kindles in 2083 or whatever, when you can have a whole freaking library of decent stuff to read? And he brings the Royale? Yikes. Really bad. I don't have much else to say.
That's a good point.
I did like the clothes. I liked that's about it. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, everybody.
So I'm with you, Jason, pretty much.
She's going to say a lot more nice things about it later. You watch. She's going to be like, well, no, probably not. Okay, we've got Marcia Classic Schreier here, dropping out of warp to tell us what she thought about this episode.
Well, I think by now you guys know how I feel about most of season 2. So this was only the second time I've seen the episode. I reviewed it yesterday, and I actually liked it better this time because I paid a little more attention. Riker, when he's reading the diaries, talks about how the book was full of cliches and shallow characters. And so if you think about it that way, they really did it well. They reproduced the book very well because it was so full of cliches and such shallow and stupid characters. And I mean, I certainly wouldn't mark it down as one of my favorites, but it got a little better for me this time. I also was thinking about the Fermat's theorem. I mean, that was a throwaway line. Why even put something like that in the script? I can understand the NASA, and changes, but why even have anything about the theorem in the script? I didn't get that at all. And I also was thinking about Troi and Riker's connection. And if she was so attuned to him that far away, why didn't she think to him, we're trying to reach you, we're working on the system, take care, we'll see you again, something. How come she can read him, but he can't read her? And this episode reminded me more of Spectre of the Gun from the original series than Piece of the Action, just because the people in Piece of the Action were real. Spectre of the Gun, they weren't. I mean, I'm not sure which episode bothered me more, but anyway, that's all I have.
Spectre of the Gun. Good reference there.
Third season.
The infamous third season of the original series. Thank you very much, Marcia. We've got Gregory K. Wickstrom here as well. What's up, Greg? Welcome. So good to see you. What did you think of this particular episode?
How's it going? You know what? So I agree with a lot of the points Neil made and a couple other people. I just feel like there's so many established rules in Star Trek, like warp 9.95. You can only go so fast from one end of the Milky Way. You can get to the other end. It'd take like 140 years, according to Star Trek Voyager. There's 4 quadrants, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. And we get caught up in these rules and how Star Trek can be, but that first opening scene where they beam down to the planet, it's all black, and there's just one rotating door. I love that. It reminded me of something like the Twilight Zone or the X-Files. But yeah, saying that, I know how ridiculous it is, but I kind of try to overlook the plot holes or the poor writing. What really gets me is the curiosity that it evokes from me. You know what I mean? We never see the aliens that did this. We never see we never see them. We don't know how they did this. It's all kind of outside of the rule book of Star Trek's rule book. And that's what really makes this episode great to me, is that it sparked a curiosity in me. And it just made me gave me the urge to explore, and I think that's what Great Trek does. It was a fun episode, and a lot of hokey characters that I loved. It was really fun, but I think it stands out for that reason. I know there is a lot of bad writing, and I recognize all those things, but I choose to overlook them because it's we're giving the writers a little bit of leeway, I guess.
Very nice.
All right. Yeah.
Good
Thanks,
attitude
everybody.
to have. Give these writers a break.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg, very much. We've got
Thanks,
Matt
everybody.
Boardman here wearing a To the Journey shirt. That's freaking awesome. The Voyager documentary. What do you got for us today, Matt?
Well, this episode to me it's sick days at home, sitting in bed, borrowing my parents' VCR TV combo and pulling it down my room and throwing in my good old Columbia House VHS and and watching. So it's nostalgic for me just because it takes me back to the times when I first watched it. I like that Mai described it as kind of
It's theater. I mean, it is. It really is. To me, this is like it's a screenplay. It's a it's theater. It's delicious in its cheesiness because I mean, it is really over the top and kind of if I think we tend to watch things with with our recentism, um and truly, I mean, all of us here are fans of Deep Space Nine, and to me, that is a masterclass in writing and how you write Star Trek, right? And so it's easy to kind of look back at some of these earlier episodes and go, "Oh man, those were really bad." But these are the episodes that laid that groundwork for what we get later on, and so I appreciate it for that. Um, I appreciate it for the theater. I, you know, I don't know. I guess maybe I'd love me a nice trashy novel too, I guess. I don't know because when it, at the end of the day, it's just a fun episode. Does it mean anything in the grand scheme of the next generation tapestry? Probably not. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it being fun and cheesy and all those things.
Mm-hmm. Very good. You know what else is fun and cheesy? Quesadillas. Yum.
Heck yeah.
Thanks
And
very
grilled
much.
cheese sandwiches.
The very talented Matt Boardman. Cirroc Lofton, any final thoughts on this winner?
Yeah, I think what I like about Star Trek when I watch it is when it makes me think about ideas and makes me think of things in a scientific way, challenging my belief systems or challenging perspectives that I have or questioning you know my natural curiosity for exploring the world and meeting cultures. And I like those kinds of stories, and I think there was an opportunity to do those kinds of things in this episode. It just wasn't executed well, in my opinion. Instead of picking a book that was bad, they could have picked a book that was good, and then we'd be trapped in a good story and a story that we're all familiar with, something that we all kind of know and can then have a relation to the character. I was curious about these aliens that are able to create this environment. Are these people? Or do they have their own life? Were they born? Like, are they made out of some kind of flesh and blood? What are these people that are inside of this simulation that was created for this purpose? And I would have liked some research on that or some kind of investigation. Maybe Picard threatened to blow the whole thing up, and they're like, "Well, no, those people are actually exist, and they were created, and even though they're not, corporeal in the same way, we're going to respect their life." There could have been more in that way. Also, I would have liked to explore: are these wormhole aliens that were able to create this type of thing? Would have been a nice little kind of parallel back there. Um, so yeah, the fact that it was a badly written book, the fact that the characters in the story are asking for their own death because it's so bad, doesn't lend well to help me want to watch it because they're actually telling me how bad it is. It's kind of not the best marketing strategy for an episode. Actually, it's like I thought Riker summed it up the best when he said, "None of this makes any sense." That was that was good enough for me. I actually felt like Deanna Troi in this episode when she excused herself from Picard's quarters. She's like, "All right, I'm out of here." That's how I felt. Like I wanted to like, "Excuse me, I'm out of this episode." um, so yeah, I mean, to see the characters set in a situation in a Vegas type situation, We love to see those kind of placements in unusual situations. But I like them to have more of a purpose. I would have liked to hear more about our early space program and, trying to attempt to go outside of our solar system, more into our own kind of cultural history and how those attempts led to whatever advancements that we now benefit from. Would have liked to hear some of those things. So yeah, those are most of my points. Yeah, and then of course, I just to bring it up again, how they are in the story bothers me too. If the book was written about these foreigners, then the foreigners themselves would have been created by these aliens, and they would have created them as well. How are they in the story? It would have been a nice little thing to kind of elaborate on. So yes, I, as a person who likes logic, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to put these kinds of things together in a logical way. So I had to just suspend the kind of things and just enjoy it as a old 80s kind of, even the music was kind of played at certain points that was indicative of just traditional television making. And it wasn't really anything beyond in that way with the music or the framing of the shots. So it was really cookie cutter for a show that is trying to push the envelope and push the boundary into science fiction in 300 years from now and all of this stuff. So it actually gave us a very basic format for that. So those are the reasons why I don't like it. I do think there were elements that were fun. Some of the performances, Worf, is really good at inserting comedy where you don't think he would put it. That's one of his gifts, and he's always doing that. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Wow, my favorite was when you said, Cirroc, when the conundrum, the paradox. What is it? That the foreigners would be in the book already. They would be in that story. They wouldn't need to be brought in from an outside force. And when you said that, I could see Jason Oaken thinking about that. Like, you actually made him like stop and go, wait a second. So I want to hear more about what Jason thinks about that in Things Left Unsaid. That was fun. I love to watch people's reactions to things. So be aware, we're watching. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Malissa, Allison, Anil, Carrie, Mai, Chris, Jed, Jason, Sue, Marcia, Gregory, and the Matt Boardman. All right, everybody, for myself, Cirroc Lofton, Aaron Eisenberg, Malissa Longo, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, always remember the seventh rule. Enjoy that drink, Carrie. X to the ninth plus Y to the... I already messed that up, didn't I? X to the nth plus Y to the nth equals Z to the nth, where N is greater than Z, of course.